April 25, 1915, 4:28 a.m. Cape Helles, Gallipoli Peninsula. A gray dawn creeps across the Aegean Sea, a subtle promise of light. A delicate mist, like a veil of gauze, hovers over the frigid water, obscuring the somber outline of cliffs. The wind whispers softly. The waves lap gently against the shore, a deceptive tranquility, almost a mocking indifference to what is about to unfold. On the deck of the HMS Implacable, a British naval officer consults his pocket watch, the second hand ticking inexorably forward. The order is imminent. Around him, hundreds of soldiers huddle in the landing boats, their silence heavy with apprehension. Some grip their rifles, fingers trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Others gaze at cherished photographs tucked safely inside their jackets, a final connection to loved ones. One private clutches a folded letter addressed to his mother, the ink blurred by anxious sweat. They all share a common, unspoken understanding of the unknown terrors that await them on the shore, or rather, the terrifying uncertainty of what awaits. Intelligence reports suggest that Ottoman defenses are minimal, a comforting assessment that does little to ease their nerves. However, the previous night, an Australian engineer overheard a sailor's hush warning that the Turks had fortified machine gun nests dug into the cliffs, a chilling contradiction. Which account holds the truth remains to be seen, but one thing is certain. The success of their mission is paramount. The Allies desperately need a breakthrough on the stalemated Western Front. Russia is buckling under immense pressure. A swift, decisive strike through the Dardanelles, a narrow, heavily fortified strait, could potentially knock the Ottomans out of the war and establish a vital supply route to the east. At least, that is a prevailing belief among the strategists back in London, far removed from the grim reality about to unfold. The hour strikes 4:30 a.m. A piercing whistle shatters the silence. Engines roar to life. The landing boats surge forward, relentlessly closing the distance to the shore. Preparation, but fatally flawed from the beginning. As the boats draw closer, the men can discern the rhythmic thump of distant artillery fire. The British fleet behind them initiates a bombardment. Massive 12-inch naval guns unleash a barrage of shells at the coastline, firing approximately 2 rounds per minute, each projectile weighing nearly 860 pounds. The explosions erupt along the ridges in blinding flashes, sending plumes of dirt and rock cascading into the air. Officers attempt to reassure the soldiers. This will silence the Turks, they assert with forced confidence. But their words ring hollow. Unbeknownst to the advancing troops, the Turkish trenches on the ridges are meticulously constructed, dug up to 3 meters deep, reinforced with sturdy rock, and strategically angled to withstand precisely this type of naval bombardment. Their machine guns, primarily Schwarzlos and Maxim models, capable of unleashing a devastating 450 to 600 rounds per minute, are securely sheltered under protective overhangs. The artillery shells scream harmlessly overhead. The cliffs barely shudder under the onslaught. The British, Australian, and French soldiers relentlessly advancing toward the beaches remain tragically unaware of the ineffectiveness of the bombardment. The approach, tension intensifies. The boats grind relentlessly forward. The distance shrinks ominously, 800 meters, 600, 400, in one boat. A young sergeant from Lancashire wipes the condensation from his glasses, his hands trembling slightly. He mentally rehearses the landing instructions. Jump into waist-deep water. Keep rifle above the surface, run toward the dunes, find cover, wait for the second wave. Simple steps in theory. He checks his rifle, a Lee Enfield SMLE, a reliable weapon capable of firing 20 to 25 aimed rounds per minute in the hands of a trained soldier. He silently wonders if he will even have the opportunity to fire a single shot. Another soldier clutches a harmonica. He carries with him always. If he manages to survive this day, he vows to play it again that very night. The cliffs loom larger now, jagged, steep, and in many places, seemingly impossible to scale. Someone whispers nervously, "Why is there no movement on the ridge? No return fire?" The unnerving silence is anything but comforting. The clash. Hell breaks loose. At 4:53 a.m., just as the first boats scrape against the sandy shore, a sudden eruption of flashes appears along the crest of the ridge. Then another, then dozens. A deafening roar tears across the beach as Turkish machine guns open fire in a terrifying, synchronized volley. Long, relentless bursts of bullets rip through the air. The first wave of soldiers is decimated before they even have a chance to stand. Bullets tear through the wooden boats, splintering them into fragments. Men are thrown into the water, thrashing desperately, sinking under the weight of their waterlogged equipment. A corporal shouts frantically, "Out! Out! Move!" But to where? The beach offers no refuge, no protection. The narrow strip of sand is hemmed in by the unforgiving cliffs. Artillery shells begin to rain down. The Turks employing 75mm field guns, firing at a rate of 10 to 12 rounds per minute, effectively bracketing the beach with lethal precision. Shrapnel whips across the sand like a scalding rain. Within minutes, casualty rates in some landing sectors soar to over 60%. A British lieutenant attempts to lead 14 men toward a small embankment, a desperate search for cover. Only 3 make it. He pulls one wounded private behind a rock barely large enough to shield them both. The private gasps, his voice filled with disbelief. "Sir, was this supposed to be easy?" The lieutenant offers no reply, his silence a grim acknowledgement of the unfolding catastrophe. Chaos. Command breaks down. Carefully laid plans crumble instantly under the onslaught. Officers shout orders that are lost in the cacophony of gunfire. Runners dispatched to relay messages collapse mid-stride, victims of the relentless barrage. The landing boats that have not yet reached the shore struggle to turn back, some circling aimlessly in the chaos. The naval ships hesitate, caught in a terrible dilemma, firing too close risks hitting their own men. Ceasing the bombardment means leaving them completely exposed. One commander mutters in despair, "We've landed in the wrong place." This assumption is partly accurate. According to some sources, strong currents did indeed push several landing craft south of their intended position, compounding the disaster. In one shattered boat, a French Marine uses his bayonet as a makeshift paddle, desperately attempting to reach a patch of rocks. He drags a comrade with him, the man's thigh ripped open by a bullet. Blood spreads through the water like ink, a grim testament to the carnage. Nearby, an Australian soldier blows a whistle, a prearranged signal to regroup, but no one moves. Most are either dead or pinned down, paralyzed by fear. Human moments amid the slaughter. Behind a small dune, a British private retrieves a photograph from his soaked uniform. His wife cradling their newborn daughter, a precious image of hope amidst the horror. He carefully tucks it inside his helmet. "For luck," he murmurs, a desperate plea. Another soldier beside him laughs weakly, a hollow sound. "We need more than luck," he replies grimly. 2 medics crawl across the sand, risking their lives to reach a screaming man with shrapnel embedded in his back. One medic is shot through the shoulder and collapses. The other, without hesitation, drags him to safety first, then returns for the wounded man, and against all odds, manages to make it back alive. A captain signals desperately with a red flag, attempting to call for reinforcements. The flag is instantly shot out of his hand, a symbol of the futility of their efforts. The second wave approaching the shore witnesses the carnage and hesitates, their resolve faltering. A few boats instinctively turn back, seeking to escape the nightmare. Officers fire their pistols into the air, shouting for them to continue, demanding they press on into the jaws of death. The beach becomes a trap. By 6 a.m., hundreds lie dead on the blood-soaked sand. Smoke from burning boats and swirling sand obscures the entire coastline, creating a scene of utter devastation. The sun rises higher in the sky, bright, merciless, indifferent to the suffering below. The attackers still have almost no foothold, their advance completely stalled. The Turks, under the strategic command of leaders like Mustafa Kemal, exploit the terrain with ruthless efficiency. Their riflemen, armed with Mauser 7, 65mm rifles, accurate up to 500 to 700 meters, methodically pick off any soldiers who attempt to climb the slopes. Their machine guns create interlocking field of fire, transforming every approach into a deadly kill zone. A British colonel radios a single, desperate message back to fleet, his voice filled with despair. "We cannot advance. We cannot withdraw. We are dying here." April 25th, 1915, 10:12 a.m. Ridge above Shrapnel Valley, Gallipoli. The sun beats down mercilessly, the heat rising in waves, a dry wind blowing from the east. The ground is brittle, dusty, littered with thistles and loose stones. Collins and the 9 remaining men cling precariously to the captured trench segment. The trench is roughly 20 meters long, barely 5 meters deep, and constructed in a jagged line, following the natural contours of slope. It is merely a secondary line, a feeder trench, but for them it represents a vital lifeline. Any further retreat means sliding back into the deadly killing zone below. He peers cautiously over the parapet. The Turkish positions are scattered strategically among the ridges and natural folds of the terrain. Many firing pits are dug only 70 to 120 meters above him, angled downward to maximize their effectiveness. Turkish riflemen wield 7.65 by 53 millimeters Mauser rifles, accurate up to 500 meters, and lethally effective from their elevated positions. He sees muzzle flashes sparking like tiny, malevolent suns. A bullet snaps past his helmet with a sickening crack. Collins ducks instinctively. Dust rains down from the trench wall. "Keep your heads low," he orders, his voice strained. "We don't move unless I say." Miller distributes ammunition. Most of the men have already burned through half their clips during the grueling climb. A few carry grenades, Mills bombs newly issued with a fragmentation radius of roughly 15 meters. But grenades are almost useless unless they can close the distance, and the slope above is a deadly conveyor belt. Below them, the second wave continues its desperate push upward. Smoke drifts along the ridge, patchy and inconsistent. The Navy's 6-inch guns still fire sporadically, but the high ridges largely negate their effect. Shells burst in the wrong draws, too far back or too far right. Communication failures compound the already overwhelming chaos. At 10:20, a messenger from the New Zealanders reaches the trench, panting heavily, hit by shrapnel on a leg, but still running with grim determination. "Orders?" Collins asks, his face etched with weariness. "They want a foothold, any foothold," the messenger replies, his voice raspy. "Hold this ridge. Reinforcements are trying to reach you." He attempts to move again, but slips as his wounded leg gives way. 2 of Collins's men pull him into the trench and stabilize his injury. Then the ridge trembles, artillery, Turkish batteries on the heights, likely 77 millimeters field guns, open fire with chilling precision. Each gun fires about 10 to 12 rounds per minute, a relentless barrage. Shells scream overhead like banshees. Explosions leap across the slope like a rapidly spreading brush fire. The trench shakes violently. "Down! Stay down!" Collins shouts above the din. A shell lands close. Too close. Soil collapses into the trench. A soldier named Harris screams as a stone shard tears into his forearm. Another shell detonates behind them, lifting a cloud of hot dust that coats their throats, choking them. The bombardment lasts 2 minutes that feel like an eternity. When it ceases, Collins cautiously checks the ridge again. Smoke curls upward, acrid and thick. The heat is sharper now, shimmering across the rocks. He hears voices in Turkish, close. Too close. He signals silently. Prepare for contact. The second major clash begins. It unfolds swiftly, brutally swiftly. A Turkish assault party of around a dozen men rushes down from the left flank, using a gully as cover. They carry Mausers and a few grenades. Their officer shouts orders, his voice sharp and steady, betraying no fear. Left flank. Collins yells, his voice raw with urgency. Rifles crack in response. Collins fires his Lee Enfield, working the bolt rapidly, his movement precise and practiced. The smooth action allows him to unleash 12 to 15 rounds per minute. His shots hammer into the gully rim. Dust spurts upward, marking each impact. Miller hurls a grenade toward the advancing shapes. It bounces once, landing behind a rock. The explosion throws up dirt and bodies in a chaotic spray. A scream follows, piercing the air, but the assault team does not falter. Several soldiers reach the edge of the trench. One leaps in, his face contorted with a primal rage. Collins pivots instantly, slamming his rifle but into the attacker's chest with brutal force. They grapple in a confined space, dust, sweat, and the cold feel of metal against skin. Collins drives a shoulder forward, pushing the attacker against the trench wall, then strikes again, relentless. The man collapses, his body limp. Another attacker plunges into the trench behind him. Miller grapples with him, both rolling over ammunition crates, their movements clumsy and desperate. A knife flashes in the dim light. Miller blocks it with his forearm, grimacing in pain, then sweeps the man's legs, slamming him down hard. He smashes the rifle, but down once, twice. The struggle abruptly ceases. Two more figures appear at the trench lip, silhouetted against the skyline. Collins fires reflexively. 2 shots. 2 silhouettes fall, tumbling backward. For a fleeting moment, there's only the sound of ragged panting, the heavy breathing of exhausted men. Then another rush of fire erupts from the ridge above. A Turkish machine gun team has repositioned, finding a new angle of attack. Likely a Schwarzlos, water-cooled, capable of firing up to 500 rounds per minute. Its deadly stream rakes the ground. Bullets stitch across the dirt just meters in front of the trench. A relentless hail of lead. Stone chips sting Collins' face. The gun's angle prevents it from firing directly into the trench, but effectively cuts off all movement. Anyone who attempts to climb out will be shredded in seconds. "We're pinned," Miller mutters, his voice tight with fear. "We hold," Collins replies, his gaze unwavering, checking his ammunition with practiced efficiency. He counts 4 remaining clips. Not enough for a long fight. The wounded messenger groans softly, his face pale. Harris clutches his bleeding arm, his eyes wide with shock. 2 others breathe heavily, their eyes darting nervously. Sweat drips from their helmets onto their rifles, forming small puddles. A lull descends. Short, fragile. Collins knows what is coming next. A coordinated push. They always come after these probing attacks. The Turks want this trench clear before more Allied troops can manage to climb up the slope. He peers up again. The machine gun pauses, barrel cooling, or perhaps a belt change. 20 seconds, maybe. The sounds of shouted Turkish commands echo from the ridge, their voices urgent and commanding. He looks at Miller, his gaze direct and unwavering. If they overrun us, the beach collapses. Miller nods grimly, his expression devoid of bravado. Only truth. Below, the second wave struggles upward, their progress agonizingly slow. Collins spots clusters of Australian infantry spreading out along the base of the ridge. Some take cover under rocky outcrops, firing upward, providing what little support they can. Others climb in short bursts, taking advantage of fleeting moments of cover. The slope punishes every misstep, every moment of hesitation. Bodies lie scattered among the stones, grim markers of their failed attempts. A whistle blows, a thin, metallic cry carried by the wind. Collins recognizes that signal instantly. It is used by some units to indicate a general forward push, a coordinated assault. Reinforcements are coming. If they reach this trench, the ridge might hold. But the Turks hear it too. A harsh shout slices down the hillside, an urgent command. More figures move among the rocks, at least 20, maybe more. An officer raises his sword, pointing directly at the trench, a clear declaration of intent. The machine gun resumes firing, its relentless stream tearing into the ground. The assault begins. Bullets tear into the slope, kicking up dirt and stone. Collins and his men hunker down, desperately seeking cover as fragments rain down around them. A grenade lands just outside the trench. He kicks it away instinctively. It detonates mid-air, showering them with grit and debris. The assault party closes in, their movements bold and relentless. Some slide down the slope, using momentum to rush the trench faster. Others fire on the move, rounds snapping dangerously overhead. Collins fires as quickly as he can. 3 shots, 4, 5. The recoil bruises his shoulder, but he ignores the pain. Miller throws another grenade, his movements swift and practiced. The explosion halts a cluster of advancing troops briefly, stunning them, but the rest keep coming, their determination unwavering. The trench walls shake as attackers jump in, their faces grim. Close combat erupts again. Fists, rifle butts, boots grinding against gravel, a brutal and chaotic dance of death. A soldier named Keaton is knocked down by a blow, collapsing onto the ground. Collins slams his rifle into an attacker's ribs, then elbows another away, creating a momentary space. Miller uses a bayonet, short, quick strikes, efficient and deadly. A Turkish soldier grabs Collins' arm, trying to wrench his rifle away, their struggle desperate and intense. Collins pivots, using the man's weight to slam him into the trench wall, a brutal maneuver. The man's helmet falls off, revealing a face contorted with rage. Dust fills the air, making it difficult to see. More shapes appear at the trench rim, silhouetted against the fading light. "Too many!" someone shouts, his voice filled with panic. But then, a crackle of rifles from below. Reinforcements. Australian infantry crest a lower ridge and begin firing upward, their sudden arrival shifting the balance of power. Their shots force several attackers to drop, disrupting the assault. The pressure shifts, the momentum faltering. Collins seizes the moment, recognizing the opportunity. Push them out. He drives forward with Miller and the others, forcing the remaining attackers back over the lip, pushing them back into the hellish landscape. A final burst of fire comes from above, then silence, only scattered moans and the whistle of wind, a mournful sound. The assault breaks, the Turkish soldiers pulling back to regroup, leaving behind their dead and wounded. Breathing heavily, Collins looks at the wreckage inside the trench. Spent casings, broken rifles, blood mixed with dust, a grim testament to ferocity of the fighting. 3 of his men are wounded. One sits against the wall, trembling uncontrollably, staring at nothing, lost in the horrors he has witnessed. Reinforcements reach them minutes later. 12 soldiers, exhausted and scraped raw from the climb, their faces grim. Their corporal salutes Collins, his salute crisp and precise. "We hold this ridge," Collins says simply, stating the hard-won truth. And for now, they do. But the day is only half over, and Gallipoli is far from finished. Its trials and tribulations yet to come. April 25th, 1915, 3:47 p.m. Near the heights above Lone Pine, Gallipoli. Light fades behind a haze of dust. The temperature begins to cool, a wind now blowing inland from the Aegean, carrying the scent of salt and smoke. The ground is a treacherous maze of rock ledges, narrow gullies, and shallow, half-finished trenches, a landscape sculpted by violence. Collins crouches behind a boulder with his remaining men, now reinforced to a total of 19, a small band clinging to life. They occupy a thin, improvised line, little more than a series of scraped-out pits connected by knee-deep paths, a fragile defense against the storm. The earlier trench they held is now a rear post, a place of relative safety. Higher ground looms another 40 to 50 meters above them, and Turkish forces still dominate those heights, their presence a constant threat. Artillery continues in scattered bursts, a relentless reminder of the war raging around them. Turkish 77mm guns fire at intervals of 3 to 4 minutes, likely conserving shells. A calculated decision. When they do fire, the explosions smack into the ridge like iron fists, shaking the ground and rattling their teeth. Allied warships attempt counterfire, but the steep terrain shields much of the Turkish line, making it difficult to pinpoint targets. At 3:51, a naval shell detonates on a distant slope, far from its intended target. Dust rises in a broad pillar, a silent monument to the inaccuracy of the barrage. The shock wave ripples across the heights. Collins feels the ground vibrate under his boots, a visceral reminder of the power of the explosives. But he knows the ships are firing blind. They rely on outdated maps and inconsistent spotting signals, a deadly combination. He checks on the men, his gaze scanning their faces. Miller's forearm is bandaged, a makeshift repair. Harris is pale but steady, his eyes reflecting a hard-won resolve. The messenger from earlier now lies behind a sandbag outcrop, his legs stabilized, breathing shallow but alive, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Collins studies the terrain again, his gaze lingering on the slopes below. From this vantage point, he sees the terrible cost of the day, the price of war. Bodies, the slopes, silent witnesses to the carnage. Some lie twisted where they fell during the climb, their limbs contorted at unnatural angles. Others slump beside rocks, rifles still clutched in their hands. Their final act, a desperate attempt to defend themselves. The casualty rate across the landing zones, he suspects, has already reached 20 to 25%. The exact figure varies by source. A staggering loss. The ridges have swallowed entire companies, their sacrifices seemingly in vain. He snaps back to attention as a bullet chips the rock near his cheek. A close call. A Turkish sniper, likely using a scope Mauser, has found their general location, his presence a chilling reminder of the constant danger. Collins signals everyone down, his movement swift and decisive. Sniper, Miller murmurs, his voice low. More than one. Collins corrects, his gaze scanning the ridge above. A second shot confirms it, slicing the air above their makeshift firing step. The sound sharp and menacing. The wind shifts, a subtle change in the atmosphere. Smoke from burning scrub drifts across the ridge, obscuring the view. The smell is sharp, bitter, and mixes with the metallic tang of spent shells, a grim olfactory reminder of the battlefield. Then a whistle, a shrill, descending blast from somewhere ahead, a chilling sound. Collins stiffens, his senses on high alert. He recognizes the pattern. Turkish assault whistles differ from Allied signals, a subtle but crucial distinction. This one means advance, an imminent attack. He grips his rifle, his knuckles white. Ready positions, he commands, his voice cracking with urgency. Figures move among the rocks above, at least 30, their movement stealthy. Some carry grenades, ready to unleash them. Others advance in bounding steps, taking advantage of what little cover they can find. The Turks understand the slope better. They know every fold, every depression, every advantage the terrain offers. They fire downhill, using gravity and angle to increase the lethality of their shots. Their actions calculated and deadly. Rifle shots ring out, piercing the air. A bullet grazes the rim of the pit, where Harris kneels, a terrifying near miss. Another slams into a sandbag, sending fibers flying, creating a small cloud of debris. A grenade bounces near Collins, landing with a soft thud. He kicks it into a depression without hesitation, reacting instinctively. The blast erupts upward, showering them with soil and rock fragments, a small but terrifying explosion. "Hold!" he shouts, his voice strained, barely audible above the din. The first wave hits, the assault relentless. Turkish soldiers slide down the slope, using elbows and heels to control their speed, their movements fluid and practiced. Collins fires 2 shots, his aim precise. One attacker jerks sideways and tumbles, his body falling limply. Another keeps coming, his face contorted with a primal rage. Miller hurls a grenade, his arm strong and accurate. It erupts behind a cluster of advancing troops, briefly stunning them, disrupting their momentum. Still they come, their determination seemingly unbreakable. A tall attacker vaults into a pit 2 positions to Collins's right, his movement swift and agile. The Anzacs soldier their grapples desperately, fighting for his life. Collins fires once, killing the attacker, then moves swiftly to support the right flank, shifting his position. Rifle fire intensifies, a cacophony of noise. Blurred figures surge along the gully above them, their movements obscured by smoke and shadow. Shadows flicker in the fading light, creating a disorienting effect. Muzzle flashes strobe in the darkening light, illuminating the scene in brief, violent bursts. A Turkish soldier leaps into Collins's pit, his attack sudden and unexpected. Collins pivots sideways, slamming his shoulder into man, driving him against the wall with brutal force. The attacker's bayonet schemes past Collins's ribs, embedding into the dirt, a terrifyingly close call. Collins swings his rifle, but cracking against a man's helmet with a sickening thud. The soldier drops, his body collapsing. Another attacker charges, his face a mask of rage. Miller intercepts him, bayonet thrust tight and fast, his movements precise and deadly. The man collapses instantly, his attack thwarted. But more descend from the ridge, their numbers seemingly endless. Too many. The second wave of the assault crashes down like falling stone, a relentless force. 3 attackers drop into the leftmost pit, overwhelming the defenders. Screams tear through the line, a horrifying sound. Collins sees 2 Anzacs fall, one clutching his stomach, his face contorted with pain, the other collapsing silently, his body lifeless. "Reform right." Collins yells, his voice barely audible above a din, issuing a desperate command. He and Miller reposition, sliding behind a ridge of broken stones, seeking a temporary haven. Their boots crunch on shell fragments, a constant reminder of the destruction around them. They fire into the mass advancing down the slope, their movements practiced and efficient. The recoil slams their shoulders, but they ignore the pain, focusing on the task at hand. Smoke thickens in their pits, obscuring the view. For a moment, the world becomes a swirling chaos. Shouts in two languages, smoke, heat, drifting sand, the thump of grenades, the cracking of rifles, a symphony of destruction. The third wave approaches, larger, coordinated, deadly, a force that threatens to overwhelm them. Collins's line is buckling, on the verge of collapse. The left flank is collapsing entirely, its defenders overwhelmed. One section is overrun, its occupants slaughtered. Another is barely holding by a single soldier who alternates between firing and throwing rocks when his rifle jams, a desperate act of defiance. Then something shifts. A distant horn echoes from the sea, a welcome sound. The rhythm is distinct, short, long, long. Naval fire support signal, a sign that help is on the way. Collins barely has time to react, his mind racing. A thunderous explosion erupts on the ridge above the attacking Turks, shaking the ground and filling the air with dust. HMS Queen Elizabeth, with her 15-inch guns, the largest in the world at the time, fires again, unleashing its destructive power. The shells weigh nearly 870 kilograms each, monstrous projectiles. Their velocity cracks the air like tearing sky, a deafening sound. Another impact. The ridge convulses, shuddering under the force of the explosion. Dust plumes rise in towering waves, obscuring everything. The Turks scatter, their assault disrupted. One shell lands behind the attackers, cutting off their retreat, trapping them in a deadly crossfire. Another blasts the top of the ridge, shredding the machine gun post that had pinned them for hours, silencing its deadly fire. For the first time today, the terrain itself shifts in the Anzacs' favor, providing a momentary advantage. Collins seizes a moment, recognizing the turning tide. Forward, drive them back. He and the remaining men surge upward 10 to 15 meters, retaking two pits and clearing the left flank, their actions driven by a surge of adrenaline. They step over rocks coated with dust and shrapnel, a grim reminder of the battle. A wounded Turkish soldier raises a trembling hand, pleading for mercy. Collins pushes him down gently and signals a medic, his humanity prevailing. Gunfire dies gradually, fading into silence. The ridge quiets, the battle subsiding. Even the wind stills for a moment, as if exhausted, a brief respite from the chaos. The third and final high point collapses into aftermath, a scene of destruction and exhaustion. By 5 p.m., the fighting slackens across the entire sector, winding down. Both sides dig in, preparing for the night. The day's gains shrink into uncertain lines drawn across broken terrain, a hard-won and tenuous victory. Collins looks out over Gallipoli from the regained ridge, his gaze sweeping across the landscape. He sees the Aegean Sea glinting between smoke plumes, a shimmering expanse of water. Boats move between troop ships and the beach, ferrying the wounded, a constant stream of casualties. Stretchers line the shoreline, a grim testament to the day's carnage. Small fires burn along the slopes where brush is ignited, their flames casting long shadows. The casualty lists are already staggering. Hundreds dead on each side, thousands wounded, a horrific toll. He picks up a folded paper from his pocket, his movements slow and deliberate. A letter from his sister in Melbourne, a connection to home. The edges are smudged with dirt, a symbol of the hardships he has endured. He reads one line, "Come home safe. You promised." Her words a plea for his survival. He closes it and tucks it away, his face etched with resolve. Harris approaches, his footsteps hesitant. "Sir, we held it," he says, his voice filled with a quiet pride. "For today," Collins replies, his words sober, his gaze unwavering. Night begins to fall, casting long shadows across the landscape. The ridges turn into dark shapes against the purple sky, a dramatic backdrop. The first stars appear above the Dardanelles, tiny points of light in the vast darkness. As he watches the horizon, Colin senses what this day truly means, the larger significance of the events. The Gallipoli Campaign is no quick victory. That much is clear. The terrain, the planning failures, the resolute Turkish defense under Mustafa Kemal. Everything signals a long, grinding ordeal, a war of attrition. What was intended to break the Ottoman Empire may instead become one of the war's costliest failures, a tragic miscalculation. The maps will change, drawn and redrawn as the campaign drags on, reflecting the shifting tides of battle. The commanders will argue, their strategies debated and questioned. Reinforcements will come, replacing the fallen. Lives will continue to be spent on these unforgiving ridges, a senseless waste. And long after the war ends, Gallipoli will remain carved in memory, etched in the collective consciousness. Not only as tragedy, but as a crucible that shapes national identities, Anzac courage, Turkish resolve, and the shared grief of all who fought here, a common bond forged in suffering. Colin stands quietly, his thoughts heavy. The wind brushes the ridge again, carrying the faint smell of smoke and salt, a haunting reminder of the day's events. Tomorrow will come, bringing new challenges and new horrors. The campaign will continue, its outcome uncertain. But this day, April 25th, 1915, will never be forgotten, its significance enduring.